Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Martial Universe Season 6 based on novel. So let's start. Numerous figures flew through mid-air before rushing towards the deeper regions of the secret treasure trove with a lightning-like speed. The person leading them was the man whom Lin Dong had just met, Liu Bai. Big brother Liu Bai, it seems that you think quite highly of Lin Dong. Behind Liu Bai, a man with a centipede-like wound on his face, glanced towards their backs and suddenly said, "Although that fellow does have some ability, does he truly have the qualifications to work with us?" Another man, who had a somewhat pale face, also frowned and asked. This person's aura was also quite strong. He himself was also quite a renowned existence in this northwestern region. It was rumored that he had already survived the second Nirvana tribulation 2 months ago, and was naturally much stronger compared to Shikuan, who had just advanced. Hence, he did not feel any fear towards Lin Dong even though he defeated Shikuan. The words he had spoke was not meant to belittle Lin Dong, but rather the competitors whom they had to face were all individuals who had surpassed Shikuan. However, Lin Dong ultimately still at the 1 Yuan Nirvana stage. Therefore, cooperation seemed to be a little out of the question. That fellow is not as simple as what you see on the surface. The one who had suddenly spoken was Mu Hongling, who had a little grudge with Lin Dong. Her long peach blossom eyes glanced at the two who had spoken before she lazily said, "Otherwise, do you think that I, Mu Hongling, is such an easy person to handle? That little fellow directly kicked me out from the secret key realm. He is the only one in so many years who dared to treat me in this manner." Liu Bai laughed softly. He immediately nodded and said, "I have also met Lin Dong back in the ancient hall. At that time, his strength was merely half a step to Nirvana stage, while his mental power was clearly that of someone who had not underwent the wind lightning trial. However, look at him now. Before he battled Shikuan by the side of the Pill River, he had spent 2 days training there. During these short 2 days, not only did he manage to break through to Nirvana stage, but he had even survived a Nirvana tribulation together. Who amongst you can complete these 2 steps in a single attempt? Moreover, he did not survive the Nirvana tribulation this time around. It is likely that there's also the wind lightning trial. Ha ha, experiencing 2 great tribulation at once and being able to endure through them. Who dares to call him simple now?" The faces of the 2 men earlier, who were at the Yuan Nirvana stage, changed when they heard these words. Indeed, none of them possessed the courage and determination to undergo both the Nirvana tribulation and the wind lightning trial together. They had seen experts who cultivated both Yuan power and mental power at the same time. There were quite a number of such people, but most of these experts would carefully separate the 2 tribulations apart. Seldom was there anyone who dared to resist the 2 great trials together like Lin Dong did. That fact alone was sufficient to tell that he was no ordinary individual. According to what I am aware of, Lin Dong used to soul martial arts when he defeated Shikuan. TSK. I am really curious about why this fellow from a low-rank empire would actually have so many trump cards. If this continues on, he could likely be compared with Tian Dao. Liu Bai laughed softly. He immediately raised his head. There was a faint fiery expression in his eyes. I am really anticipating the 100 Empire War half a year later. I really wish to know just how many hidden individuals will emerge at that time. Lin Dong had also descended from the mid-air after Liu Bai's group left. After which, he led Little Flame and landed in front of Mo Ling's group, who were staring at them. Lin Dong involuntarily smiled when he saw their expression of theirs before he randomly tossed the sect seals over to them. The 3 of them hurriedly received those seals. After which, they raised their heads to look around them. Those empires and experts in the sky no longer had any intention of attacking them at this moment. They might not pay heed to Mo Ling's group, but with Lin Dong at their side, they had some who could be considered as a heavyweight. This caused them to be afraid of having any deviating thoughts. It is unexpected that you have already reached this stage after parting for just a short couple of months. Mo Ling smiled bitterly and said to Lin Dong, "I was merely lucky. Isn't it the same for the 3 of you now?" Lin Dong smiled. If Mo Ling and the rest could obtain the inheritance from the Heaven Cloud sect, their strength would definitely soar. In the future, they might even possess the qualification to ascend into that nirvana ranking. Hee hee, seems like we have gained some good luck after following you for a period of time. Jiyun laughed before continuing, if you are interested in this Heaven Cloud sect, we can bring you in and you can try to see if you can obtain the inheritance. All of them understood that had Lin Dong not arrived in the nick of time today, not only would they lose their sect seals, but if they were careless, they might even lose their lives in this place. Since there are only 3 of these sect seals, it is likely that the inheritance inside is only meant for 3 people. I shall not join in and take a share. Ha ha, you need not worry about me. There are many sects' inheritances within this ancient treasure trove. Lin Dong shook his head. He would naturally not take up one of Mo Ling's group spot. Although this Heaven Cloud sect might be considered quite great, it was not one that was very important to Lin Dong. His mindset was similar to Liu Bai's group. This sect's inheritance might not be considered crucial to the current Lin Dong, but it was something that could change the destiny of Mo Ling's group and allow them to possess the qualifications to catch up with the other experts from the high-rank empires. I will guard all of you while you enter. Once you begin to accept the inheritance, I will leave this place and hurry to the deeper regions of the treasure trove. Lin Dong voiced his thoughts. Currently, Mo Ling and the other 2 were all at half-step to Nirvana stage. Honestly speaking, this kind of strength considered nothing in the ancient battlefield. Since Lin Dong had already helped them until this point, he was naturally going to make sure that they smoothly received the inheritance. Mo Ling and the 3 others also felt a little moved when they heard this. They sighed softly and said, when we left the Great Yang Empire back then, my father, the Emperor, has instructed us to follow you. Looks like his advice was indeed spot on. When Lin Dong had conflicted with Lin Langtian back then, they had all chosen to stand on Lin Dong's side. Thinking back now, all of them undoubtedly rejoiced at their choice. Though Lin Langtian might possess outstanding talent, he was indeed inferior as a friend when compared to Lin Dong in the hearts of Mo Ling's group. Let's go, we shall enter this sect remains and see if we can obtain any treasures. Mo Lin shook his head. His gaze suddenly looked towards little flame behind Lin Dong and asked hesitatingly, this is Lin Yang, my brother. You have met in the past. He is the demon tiger that was following beside me. Now that he had broken through to Nirvana stage, he has already broke free of his beast's body. Lin Dong smilingly said. Mo Ling's group directly became stunned. Their eyes were extremely shocked when they saw little flame. Clearly, they did not expect that the latter would actually be that demonic beast that had been following beside Lin Dong in the past. Nirvana stage. Immediately, those stunned expressions turned into envious ones. That level was something they had dreamed of. It was unexpected that the demonic beast beside Lin Dong had currently already reached this stage. Little Flame gave Mo Ling's group, whom he was somewhat familiar with, a simple and honest smile. However, that smile clearly possessed some additional pressure when it was matched with his enormous size. Let's go. Lin Dong waved his hand. Mo Ling's group nodded when they heard him. They extended their hands and the 3 sect seals slowly drifted upwards. After which, they transformed into a strange light. This light shot towards the light barrier that was covering the ancient remains. Immediately, a gap was slowly thrown on that light barrier, which could disregard the wild attacks by Nirvana stage experts. Lin Dong's group did not delay for long when they saw the gap appear. Their bodies moved and they charged in amidst countless number of envious gazes. Rumble. The entire island began to tremble just as the group entered the light barrier. After which, everyone saw the ancient remains simply disappearing under the cover of the light barrier. Everyone in the sky looked at each other when they saw this scene. After which, they could only sigh helplessly. They scattered unwillingly and once again went in search for traces of other sect remains, hoping that they could have the good fortune like Mo Ling's group. Lin Dong's group was curiously examining the remains that had appeared in front of them while everyone in the sky had helplessly scattered. This was an ancient wide open ground. At the front of the open ground, one could see an ancient sect's hall. Is this the ancient sect? Mo Ling and the two others looked around them curiously. This place might not appear extremely grandiose, but it also possessed a majestic atmosphere. Kai. A short while after Lin Dong's group had entered, 3 rays of light shot out from within the hall of the sect. Finally, the rays covered Mo Ling and the 2 others who were holding on to the sect seal. At the same time, a suction force surged out, pulling the 3 of them into the large hall. Looks like the inheritance is about to begin. Lin Dong was initially startled when he saw this scene. However, he quickly let out a soft laughter. Brother Lin Dong, it would be too courteous to thank you. However, you are really a good friend. It is our blessing to have such a good friend like you. Mo Ling's group had also sensed the enormous suction force. Immediately, they cupped their hands solemnly towards Lin Dong and laughed. Bang! Mo Ling's words had just sounded out when the bodies of the 3 of them shot out and were forcefully pulled into the large hall. A light barrier surged behind them, completely sealing off the large hall. These fellows. Lin Dong grinned slightly as he looked at the tightly shut large hall. He felt happy for Mo Ling and the others for being this fortunate. This ancient open ground had become empty after Mo Ling's group was sucked into the large hall. Lin Dong's eyes swept around him before he led Little Flame and walked towards an ancient stone tablet at the middle of the wide open ground. The stone tablet did not possess martial arts like Lin Dong had imagined. Instead, it seemed that some information on this ancient treasure trove was recorded on it. Evidently, Lin Dong was extremely interested in the face of this. The information on the stone tablet had become somewhat blurry because of the flow of time. However, Lin Dong still managed to decipher some key terms on it. Tiangang Alliance. 108 sects. 16 protector sects, 4 great mysterious sects. Lin Dong's eyes were slightly shocked as he looked at these words. This so-called Tiangang Alliance should be the part of the alliance of sects in this ancient treasure trove. It was unexpected that there were actually 108 sects. This was indeed quite a great size. 16 protector sects. Lin Dong's eyes flickered. This Heaven Cloud sect seemed to be just one of them. 4 great mysterious sect. This should be the highest members of this sect alliance. Looks like the most precious inheritance in this ancient treasure trove should belong to them. Liu Bai and the others should perhaps be after their inheritances as well. The corner of Lin Dong's mouth was lifted slightly. If he guessed correctly, the hall of the 4 sects should be the most important place of this ancient treasure trove. Perhaps, the Samsara pill is also located there. Lin Dong did not linger on for too long in the remains of the Heaven Cloud sect. After seeing Mo Ling and the rest entering the large hall and receiving the inheritance, he once again turned around and directly left this wide ancient ground. The light barrier that surrounded the remains was one that was difficult to enter but easy to leave. Hence, it did not take Lin Dong much effort to leave this place smoothly. When he came out from the light barrier, the people suspended around the island had mostly scattered. Following which, he observed his surroundings a little before he directly led Little Flame and hurried towards the deeper regions of the ancient treasure trove. Of course, Lin Dong did not come out totally empty-handed from entering the remains this time around. Quite a bit of information related to the ancient treasure trove were recorded on the stone tablet. The information on it was much more complete compared to those which Lin Dong had obtained from those bones. He even became aware of some routes that led towards the deeper regions. Having a final destination in mind, Lin Dong did not have any intention of randomly roaming around. There might be many inheritance within this ancient treasure trove, but Lin Dong did not want just any ordinary inheritance. Lin Dong usually did not act. However, once he did so, he would go after the best. Clearly, the strongest inheritance in this ancient treasure trove ought to belong to the 4 mysterious sects. After all, they were the ones in charge of this Tiangang alliance. Therefore, their inheritance were definitely not ordinary in nature. Of course, Lin Dong was also aware that he was definitely not the only one who was after the inheritances of the 4 mysterious sect. Even Liu Bai and the others like him were gunning after these four mysterious sects. Hence, it was not going to be an easy matter to snatch for the best amidst so many competitors. After all, those empires and experts, who possessed the qualification and the ambition to gun for these four mysterious sects, would definitely surpass the Devil Cliff Empire and Shakuan. These people were all going to be extremely troublesome to deal with. Four mysterious sects. No matter what happens, one of their inheritance will land in my hands. Only then will I have not wasted my time on this trip. Lin Dong raised his head, looked at the distant dusky space and muttered to himself. Lin Dong did not stop anymore during his subsequent travel. Even the appearance of the remains of a sect in certain locations did not pique even the slightest of his interest. His direction did not change as he headed straight towards the deeper regions of the treasure trove. While Lin Dong was swiftly traveling, he also began to sense that the surrounding natural yuan power seemed to have become vaguely dense after half a day's time. Moreover, the originally dilapidated space also showed signs of shattering. Numerous frightening spatial crack lines that were just like the sickle of a death god suddenly appeared, causing Lin Dong to appear to be a little miserable looking. However, Lin Dong also understood that the changes in this surroundings also meant that he was gradually approaching the deeper regions of the ancient treasure trove. This place was not one that any ordinary empire or expert would dare to enter. As Lin Dong proceeded towards the deeper regions of the ancient treasure trove, the noisy surroundings that Lin Dong had seen earlier became increasingly rare. Along the way, he would only occasionally see some figures with powerful auras rushing by. All of their aura had actually reached the level of 1 yuan nirvana stage. Clearly, those empires and experts who could come to this place were all the top-ranked individuals in this northwestern region. Lin Dong traveled in this manner for another hour or so before he suddenly sensed that his surrounding temperature seemed to have soared. His eyes immediately narrowed. After which, he seemed to have thought of something as a joyous expression flashed across his eyes. Lin Dong raised his head while the joyous expression flashed across his eyes. The space in the distance had suddenly turned crimson. There seemed to be a fire cloud that spread over the sky at that spot, blocking all the paths. When Lin Dong gradually approached, the fire cloud-like thing was finally clearly witnessed by Lin Dong. His eyebrows immediately twitched involuntarily. This was a crimson sea of flames that stretched to an unknown place. It was as though this space itself was burning. The originally dilapidated space around the sea of fire was being incinerated until it showed traces of being distorted. The space was extremely unstable. Nirvana burning sky array. Lin Dong started at this majestic scene in front and muttered to himself. From the stone tablet, he was already aware that there was a formation guarding the deepest region of the ancient treasure trove. Clearly, the sea of flames in front of him was that so-called formation. It was called the Nirvana burning sky array. If one wished to enter the deepest region of the treasure trove, one must pass through this sea of fire. The flame within this array was burning fiercely, and it was not ordinary flame. Instead, it was a fire that was agglomerated from Nirvana Chi. This Nirvana fire would ignite the Nirvana Chi if a Nirvana expert remained for too long within it, causing the latter to die as a result. It was indeed extremely vicious. Lin Dong looked at this never-ending sea of fire, before his mouth clicked in a praising manner. This thing was a true hindrance. He wondered just how many experts had turning back upon witnessing this sight. This formation is truly not a simple one. You need to be careful. Little Martin appeared before it glanced at this sea of fire that spread across the space, and cautioned him with some shock. I know. Lin Dong nodded. He was not a fool. This formation was something that this large sect alliance used to guard their most important treasure. Even after several years, its strength was still frightening. If one was to underestimate it, that person would truly be a fool. Lin Dong's eyes glanced all around. He could vaguely see some human figures arriving from the distant. Finally, they were suspended outside this sea of fire. They hesitated for a moment before clenching their teeth and charging in. It seems like the inheritance of the four mysterious sects held a great allure. Let's go. Lin Dong waved his hand. He did not hesitate, as he moved his body, and directly charged into the sea of fire. Little Flame also held a metal rod in his hand and swiftly followed behind. A frightening hot wave came pouncing over the moment Lin Dong charged into the sea of flames. Immediately, Lin Dong felt his skin turn bright red. A thought ran through his mind before his invisible mental energy surged out. After which, it formed an invisible barrier around his body, isolating the frightening hot wave. This Nirvana burning sky array would automatically ignite as long as there was the presence of Nirvana Chi. Hence, no one dared to maneuver their Nirvana Chi in this place. One would also have to be extremely wary when they used their Yuan power. After all, once one stepped into the Nirvana stage, one's Yuan power would have experienced the refinement from Nirvana Chi. No one knew whether it would be ignited in this place. However, it was obvious that Lin Dong did not care about this. His mental power had no relation to Nirvana Chi. Hence, it was the best choice for him to use to block the erosion of the Nirvana flames. The invisible mental power covered Lin Dong and Little Flame. The two people also turned into a rainbow glow that cut through the sea of fire at a lightning-fast pace as they advanced towards deepest region. While Lin Dong was passing through the sea of flames, Lin Dong's mental energy spread apart. He was constantly keeping tabs on the activities surrounding him. From the stone tablet, he became aware of how frightening this Nirvana burning sky array was. If he was truly able to charge past it in such a manner, its reputation would be a little too comical. Yet, it was clear from that Sect Alliance's combined strength that he would not be allowed to. Clearly, reality proved that Lin Dong's predictions were not without reason. Not long after they had charged into the Nirvana burning sky array, an unusual movement was suddenly transmitted from the surrounding Nirvana fire. Swoosh swoosh. The unusual movement was detected by the cautious Lin Dong immediately. His eyes dilated. After which, he saw that numerous flames had suddenly rushed over from within the sea of fire. There were numerous small bright red balls, which were the size of a fist. A wild and violent fluctuation that spread from the balls caused Lin Dong to narrow his eyes slightly. Nirvana Fire Thunder. Lin Dong naturally recognized these strange balls. Immediately, his expression became somewhat solemn. These Nirvana Fire Thunder were all formed from pure Nirvana Chi, and they were extremely violent and would explode upon contact. Their powers were also very powerful. Just a single one would be able to blast an ordinary Nirvana expert until he became seriously wounded. If there were many of them, it was likely that even Lin Dong, who had the strength of someone who had endured one Nirvana tribulation, would wound up with a great headache while dealing with them. Evidently, it was obvious that these Nirvana Fire Thunder that had appeared in front of Lin Dong had already reached the extent where he would feel endangered. Little Flame held the metal rod in his hand tightly. His eyes cautiously looked at those Nirvana Fire Thunder that were rushing over from all directions. It seemed like he had also felt a little endangered. Rat, don't touch these things. There is an uncountable number of Nirvana Fire Thunder within this Nirvana fire. If you cause one to explode, you would likely ignite a chain reaction. At that time, a couple of thousands or even tens of thousands of them would come blasting over. Disregarding someone like you who has the strength of a 1 Yuan Nirvana stage, even if you endure another Nirvana tribulation, it is likely that you will still be blasted into pieces. Little Martin came out at this moment and warned him. Lin Dong frowned when he heard this. He felt that these things were extremely troublesome. If he did not take care of these Nirvana Fire Thunder, it was clear that he would not be able to advance even a single step. Fool, what is your devouring ancestral symbol used for? Regardless of how violent these Nirvana Fire Thunder are, they are also formed from Nirvana Chi. As long as they are made up of energy, the devouring ancestral symbol would be able to devour them. Little Martin involuntarily chided when he saw his awkward appearance. It was really the case of giving direction to someone who was lost. Only at this moment did Lin Dong finally woke up. He had forgotten that these Nirvana Fire Thunder were Nirvana Chi at their core, regardless of how violent they were. Kai. Since he now had a method to resolve his problem, Lin Dong ceased procrastinating. A thought passed through his mind before a circular black hole spread apart behind Lin Dong. After which, devouring strength surged out. The nirvana fire thunder that came rushing over from the surrounding sea of fire directly whistled past and flew into the black hole. Boom, boom, boom. A vague low and deep muffled sound was emitted from within the black hole. The blood within Lin Dong's body also churned a little at this moment. Soon after waves of powerful nirvana chi were poured into his body from the black hole. A joy flashed past Lin Dong's face following the pouring of such surging nirvana chi. This degree of absorption was faster than when he was training at the Pill River. Lin Dong and Little Flame swiftly rushed through the sea of fire. Those nirvana fire thunder that were repeatedly shot over were completely absorbed into the black hole. Finally, they transformed into raging nirvana chi that coursed through Lin Dong's limbs and bones, refining him from inside out. This scene was somewhat spectacular and shocking. If another person was to see this, it was likely that he would end up being stunned. Even someone at the level of Liu Bai and the others would have to carefully and slowly navigate through such a place. Who would dare to raise his speed to his limit like Lin Dong, and becoming increasingly jubilant in the face of an attack by so many nirvana fire thunder? Lin Dong's momentum continued for around 10 minutes. However, he was still unable to spot an end to the sea of flames. As he had absorbed a large amount of nirvana fire thunder during this journey, the interior of his body was faintly feeling a little swollen. He was unable to completely absorb the great amount of nirvana chi within a short while despite his strength. However, his rapid pace did not continue till he had reached the edge of the sea of fire. Perhaps it was because of this wanton absorption, but he had finally stirred up an even more powerful existence within this nirvana burning sky array. Kai. Lin Dong's swift-moving body suddenly stilled. The transition between his fast pace and its sudden drop caused his eyes to feel a little uncomfortable. However, Lin Dong was not concerned about this at this moment. His eyes were firmly staring at his front. The nirvana flames was burning fearsomely at that spot. A faint black-colored flame was quietly suspended in that nirvana flame. That flame wiggled repeatedly, appearing to possess some intelligence. At times, it would transform into a beast form with a human face. It looked extremely strange. Lin Dong was startled as he looked at this cluster of black-colored fire substance. His mouth was dry as it moved. A moment later, a soft voice was finally emitted from his mouth. This is Nirvana Demon Flame. The Nirvana Demon Flame was kind of flame that had been formed from Nirvana Chi. However, it was several times more powerful than any ordinary Nirvana flame. This kind of flame was not scorching hot, but it possessed unusual melting ability. Under the wrap of that flame, even the powerful Nirvana golden body would be melted into a puddle of blood. Normally speaking, this kind of Nirvana demon flame would only appear after one experienced 3 Nirvana tribulation. Such a flame was born from within. If one was careless, one would be stealthily melted down by it. At that time, other people might not see any change from the outside, but the interior of one's body would likely become completely empty, and one's flesh and bones would cease to exist. It was an extremely frightening and strange fate. Such a thing was an existence that would cause those experts, who had the qualification to attempt the 3rd Nirvana tribulation, to change their expressions instantly. It was also the reason why Lin Dong's face would suddenly appear so ugly after seeing the Nirvana demon flame appearing in front of him. The black-colored Nirvana demon flame was suspended in front of Lin Dong. Its black fire seed rose slowly, while it repeatedly changed its shape, appearing just like a demon bearing their fangs, causing one's heart to turn cold. Lin Dong's expression was solemn. He did not dare to move his body. He knew that the instant he moved, the Nirvana demon flame in front of him would immediately pounce towards him. Furthermore, there was no guarantee that he would be able to endure the melting strength of this Nirvana demon flame with his current strength. You are really unlucky, little Martin, who was on Lin Dong's shoulder, looked at this cluster of black-colored flame and whispered. Behind Lin Dong, Little Flame also acted as though it had met a great enemy. Faint black-colored energy flowed over the surface of his body, while its eyes cautiously stared at the nirvana demon flame that was floating unsteadily. Now is not the time to pass such sarcastic remarks. The corner of Lin Dong's mouth was pulled as his voice was consciously soft. His eyes were cautiously staring at the nirvana demon flame, which was wiggling. It is unexpected that this kind of nirvana demon flame has actually been created within this nirvana burning sky array. This thing might be dangerous, but it is also a treasure. If you are able to control it, it will definitely become another ace up your sleeve. Little Martin suddenly said, as it stared at that nirvana demon flame. Lin Dong's face involuntarily twitched when he heard this, before he immediately let out a dry laughter. If this nirvana demon flame was something that was so easy to control, it was likely that those experts, who had the qualification the third nirvana tribulation and beyond, would not turn so fearful when they heard its name. Even Lin Dong, who possessed the devouring ancestral symbol, did not dare to carelessly swallow this thing. It should be known that this thing would not completely disintegrate. If a little bit of it was allowed to enter Lin Dong's body, it was likely that the interior of his body would be melted until nothing was left. At that time, one would suffer a fate worse than death. Of course, if this thing could really be controlled like Little Martin had mentioned, it would indeed be considered a killing move. After all, this was something that even experts like Liu Bai were extremely wary of. It is true that this thing cannot be subdued with the devouring ancestral symbol. However, you have more than a single legendary item like the devouring ancestral symbol, Little Martin laughed. The devouring ancestral symbol might be powerful, but Lin Dong was still too weak after all. Therefore, he was unable to unleash its true strength. You mean, the mysterious stone talisman? Lin Dong was startled momentarily before recovering immediately. The only godlike items that he had were the devouring ancestral symbol and the mysterious stone talisman. Yes. Little Martin nodded. Its claws immediately moved before a warm white glow flew out from Lin Dong's palm. It was the mysterious stone talisman. Boom. At the moment that Little Martin summoned the mysterious stone talisman, the nirvana demon flame in front seemed to have sensed something. Immediately, the flame curled and suddenly rushed out. It charged towards Lin Dong's side with a lightning-like speed. Cold perspiration appeared on Lin Dong's forehead the moment he saw the action of the nirvana demon flame. A thought passed through his mind before his majestic mental energy rushed out. It swiftly formed a tough mental energy barrier in front of him. Kai. However, this mental energy barrier that could block a powerful explosion from a 1 nirvana stage expert was as weak as being curd in front of that cluster of black-colored flame. The latter had just made contact when the mental energy barrier, before it disappeared at a shockingly speed, appearing just like snow that had met with a flame. Lin Dong finally sensed the frightening ability of this nirvana flame at this moment. No wonder those experts, who had the ability to attempt the third nirvana stage, were so afraid of it. Little Martin, are you done? Lin Dong's body hurriedly withdrew. His mental energy rushed out and repeatedly blocked the nirvana demon flame that was charging over. However, regardless of what tactic he used, that nirvana demon flame still swiftly charged over in an overwhelming manner and continuously reduced the gap between the both of them. All Lin Dong could do was to hurriedly cry towards Little Martin. Little Martin ignored Lin Dong's cry. Instead, its eyes were solemn as it continued to activate the stone talisman. It only waved its claws when Lin Dong was running around in circles, thanks to the cluster of nirvana demon flame. A symbol that was agglomerated from cream-colored warm light suddenly shot out from within the stone talisman. Swoosh! The white symbol glow flashed past. Just like a net, it dashed towards that nirvana demon flame and completely wrapped itself around it. Kai. The two collided with each other in an instant. However, the domineering manner that the nirvana demon flame had displayed earlier did not appear again when they made contact. That white-colored symbol was flickering repeatedly as it strangely stopped the momentum of the nirvana demon flame. Seal. Little Martin's eyes flashed the moment it saw the situation. Its claws danced and the white glow symbol spread swiftly. It became just like a seal that firmly wrapped around that cluster of nirvana demon flame. When that nirvana demon flame was wrapped by the white glowing symbol, the wild fluctuation that was originally present on it strangely calmed down gradually. Clearly, the energy of this stone talisman was actually able to suppress the melting strength of the nirvana demon flame. Little Martin beckoned with its claw. The nirvana demon flame, which was wrapped by the white glowing symbol, slowly descended. Finally, it was suspended in front of Lin Dong's cautious eyes. Lin Dong stared at this cluster of black-colored flame in front of him. Only after seeing that it did not react strangely did he quietly sigh in relief. Immediately, a joyous expression surged onto his face. The process of subduing this nirvana demon flame had clearly went smoother than he had expected. This stone talisman seal is sufficient to suppress this nirvana demon flame. You use it in the future when fighting with others. It is likely that even Liu I would wound up in quite a sorry state. Little Martin proudly stated. Lin Dong nodded. This thing would only appear after having attempted the third nirvana tribulation. Therefore, there was no question that it was extremely dangerous. If it was used appropriately, it would indeed be a killing move. There would definitely be some extremely troublesome opponents in the upcoming fights. Examples include the mysterious Yang Sen and the others. If one wanted to fight with these people, one would likely be eaten alive unless one possessed some special tactics. Lin Dong fiddled with the nirvana demon flame that had been sealed by the stone talisman seal. He immediately flicked his finger and saw a wisp of black-colored flame being separated from it. Hua! This wisp of black-colored flame had just appeared when the nirvana flame that permeated the surroundings suddenly rose in an increasingly intense. Lin Dong's body actually vaguely showed signs of merging with this sea of fire. Let's go. Lin Dong smiled. He maneuvered this wisp of nirvana demon flame and wrapped it around himself and Little Flame. Immediately, they appeared to have merged with this sea of flame as they quietly hurried through it. Their speed was several times faster than before. This was a nirvana fire sea, while this nirvana demon flame was an existence that was even stronger than the nirvana fire. With its presence, the ripples which could ignite the nirvana chi in one's body was also completely isolated outside Lin Dong's body. Moreover, there was even a merger between the two. This allowed Lin Dong to be just like a fish in water. He swiftly swam through it in a completely silent manner. It was likely that he would not be detected by others even if he was to pass by them. Moreover, the most important thing was that with the isolation from the nirvana demon flame, the many fire thunder and other hidden attacks that filled the sea of fire was completely ineffective against Lin Dong. The current Lin Dong seemed to have transformed into a flame within the sea of fire. With Lin Dong's speed, the sea of fire was swiftly channeled behind him. Lin Dong could sense that the heat surrounding him seemed to have weakened. Immediately, Lin Dong's spirits were lifted. He knew that he was about to pass through this nirvana burning sky array. Huh! Two figures, which were wrapped by fire, swiftly rushed past this sea of fire. Suddenly, the flame shook a little. A haze shot out from within it and looked towards their left. A vacuum had actually appeared within the sea of fire at that spot. There was a black figure stepping on empty space within that vacuum. Lin Dong's eyes looked towards the figure that had actually formed a vacuum within this nirvana burning sky array. His eyes had shrunk into the size of a pinhole, especially after he sensed the vague fluctuation from the body. Lin Dong, be careful. Little Martin let out a low surprised voice that suddenly sounded within Lin Dong's heart. That voice actually contained a rare solemnness that had never appeared before. This scene that suddenly unraveled within the vast sea of fire caused Lin Dong to be so stunned that he unable to react in time. However, he did not lose his calm and exposed himself due to his cautious nature. Instead, he carefully maneuvered a wisp of nirvana demon flame and perfectly hid his body within that sea of flames. Lin Dong hid in the darkness. His gaze involuntarily shot over towards the opposite side. Following the careful screening with his eyes, he had discovered that there were two figures instead of one in that vacuum. However, the second figure was a little adrift. That figure appeared to have utilized a method similar to the one Lin Dong used to hide himself. He had allowed his body to merge with the surroundings. Therefore, Lin Dong was unable to spot him immediately. Who are these two people? Lin Dong's eyes became extremely solemn. He could sense an extremely dangerous ripples emitting from those two figures. That kind of danger was something that even exceeded what he had felt from Liu Bai. This discovery caused Lin Dong's heart to be somewhat shaken. He knew that this ancient battlefield was filled with hidden experts. However, they shouldn't have reached this extent. The aura of those two people are a little strange. Little Martin's cautious voice also suddenly sounded out. What do you mean? Lin Dong frowned slightly as he asked in his heart. I am unable to explain. Their auras are a little different compared with the people in the ancient battlefield. Little Martin hesitated and said. Lin Dong was startled. These people from the ancient battlefield had all come from the Eastern Xian empires. Since Little Martin had said that these people's aura were a little different from theirs, was it possible that these two people were not from the Eastern Xian region? This ridiculous thought caused Lin Dong to involuntarily shake his head. This ancient battlefield should have been controlled by those super sects from the Eastern Xian region. Being the training ground which they used to select disciples, those who were not from their Eastern Xian region would definitely not be allowed in. Although these two people might seem strong to Lin Dong's eyes, they would likely be viewed as ordinary individuals in the eyes of those super sects. Therefore, they would not be able to hide from those abnormal existence and sneak into the ancient battlefield. While various thoughts were coursing through Lin Dong's mind, the two people within that vacuum region also began to converse. Their voices were not loud, but Lin Dong was also clear able to hear them. He heard a vague husky soft voice. This space, the Eastern Xian region has been in possession of it for long enough. This short sentence caused a storm to suddenly rage within Lin Dong's heart. He even felt his skin vaguely turn numb. Just what did he accidentally stumbled upon? He had come from a small empire, the Great Yang Empire. The Eastern Xian region was currently just like a colossal existence that he could not even fathom. Yet, there was actually someone who was planning to snatch this space from such a great being's hands. Just how frightening would this fight be? Lin Dong's eyes flickered. He decisively turned around and left. It was best that he did not get involved with something like this. Besides, it would also be pointless even if he got involved. Who is there? However, the instant Lin Dong turned around, a slight ripple was emitted from his perfectly concealed body. A cry that seemed to have originated from hell resounded from that vacuum region. Swoosh! Cold perspiration instantly flowed down from Lin Dong's forehead. In the next instant, his body suddenly rushed forward. His speed was also unleashed to its limit. Bang bang! While he was fleeing, the sea of flame behind him was suddenly split apart by a frightening energy. After which, it gave chase with a lightning-like speed. Lin Dong's eyes shrunk when he sensed the ripple from behind him. He knew that if those two mysterious fellows from behind him were to catch up, it was likely that he would wound up in a sorry state today. Little Flame's eyes were somewhat bright red, while he remained by Lin Dong's side. A black-colored light tiger was vaguely visible. The metal rod in his hand also released its scales with a kai sound. Don't be reckless. Lin Dong was a little anxious when he saw Little Flame's actions. Little Flame might possess quite a powerful fighting strength, and would even be able to fight head-on against a 2-yuan Nirvana stage expert. However, the two mysterious people behind definitely possessed strength that far exceeds a 2-yuan Nirvana stage. At this moment, the incomparably sharp energy had swiftly descended and was about to cover both Lin Dong and Little Flame. Lin Dong clenched his fist before an ancient secret key appeared. After which, he grabbed Little Flame and entered into the mysterious key domain. Rumble. Lin Dong could sense that the entire space trembled intensely the moment he entered the mysterious key space, and it felt as though the space was collapsing. Fortunately, this tremble lasted for only a moment before it completely disappeared. Although the tremble had ceased, Lin Dong still did not dare to make any unusual movement. He knew that though there was no way to infiltrate this mysterious key domain, he did not know for sure whether those two mysterious people were in possession of any unique skills. The interior of the mysterious key domain was completely silent. Even Lin Dong's breath was suppressed to its weakest extent. Lin Dong shut his eyes and his mind merged with the ancient secret key. He was able to vaguely sense that there seemed to be a kind of vague scanning that swept over the ancient secret key before spreading over from a great distance. This kind of scanning continued for a short while before it completely disappeared. At that moment, Lin Dong finally heaved a sigh of relief and sat down. Flame spread from within the sea of flame while Lin Dong had sighed in relief. Two figures flashed and appeared. Their expressions were somewhat solemn as their gazes repeatedly swept around them in a sharp and shady manner. That fellow had actually escaped. One of the two knitted his eyebrows and spoke in a solemn voice. Would he hinder our plans? The person who asked the question had an ordinary appearance. However, both of his eyes were a deep strange purple-black color. His eyes were densely cold as he glanced all around him before replying immediately, "We did not reveal too much information before. Even if he wished to inform others, he would have nowhere to do so. By the time he has an opportunity, our plan would have already been completed. We were really careless." However, that fellow was actually able to merge with the Nirvana burning sky array and escaped our senses. Looks like he is also no simple individual. The other person shook his head and spoke darkly. Forget it, let's go first. We should avoid revealing ourselves from now onwards to avoid any complications in the future. That man with purple-black eyes spoke before waving his hand and swiftly rushing towards another area, at a great distance away. This sea of flames became quiet once again, after the two people left. This kind of silence continued for around 10+ minutes, before the sea of fire shook. Those two people who had left earlier had once again strangely appeared. Only after they looked at their surroundings that was completely void of activity, with ugly expressions, did they finally clench their teeth and completely turn their bodies around. After these two people had completely given up, they became unaware that Lin Dong had finally walked out of the mysterious key domain into a sea of flame that was a short distance away. Lin Dong and Little Flame looked at the quiet sea of flames around them and heaved a sigh of relief. TSK, that was really close. Little Martin also appeared. It lured before immediately saying, "Those people should not be people from the eastern Xian region. It seems that we have become aware of something. It is best to be ignorant about such matters." Lin Dong shook his head. With his current strength, it was best that he did not intervene in a fight at such a level. Relax, as long as Grandpa Martin obtains the Samsara pill, I will recover some of my strength. At that time, even those two fellows from earlier will not dare to touch you with Grandpa Martin protecting you. Little Martin waved its claws and lazily said. Lin Dong rolled his eyes at that fellow. He was too lazy to reply him. After sweeping his gaze around, he identified his direction and said, "Let's go. We have already arrived at the edge of this formation. It is likely that we are about to arrive at our destination." Lin Dong did not appear to be overly worried about those two mysterious people from earlier. Although he was unaware of just what method they had used to sneak into this ancient battlefield, he did not believe that they had anyone who was on par with those super sect disciples. It was fine if these people hid in this place. However, they would likely not dare to create a commotion. Otherwise, the first ones whom they would end up attracting would be the super sects observing this place. Those super sects from the eastern Xian region would definitely not allow these outsiders to create trouble in their training ground. Little Martin once again flew into the stone talisman after hearing this. Little Flame also nodded his head and followed behind Lin Dong. They swiftly flew towards another part of the sea of flame. This time around, Lin Dong no longer merged with the sea of flame during his journey. Instead, he directly chose to use an ordinary method and used his mental power to suppress the corrosion of the fire wave. Although his speed could not be compared to before, it would not be detected for being too unique. This journey did not last for long. After around 10 minutes, Lin Dong sensed that the temperature around him had gradually begun to fall. The crimson color that permeated his eyes also began to become increasingly sparse. The crimson color became increasingly sparse, before it finally disappeared completely. When Lin Dong stepped out of the sea of flames, He raised his eyes and saw a majestic ancient scene in front of him. He knew that he had successfully passed through the nirvana burning sky array and reached the deeper regions of the ancient treasure trove. This video will end here.